What's going on, Derek?
Not much, man. How you doing?
Yeah, good, good. Um, so I guess welcome guys that are here. I mean we could just start, maybe a chat or something until more people pop on. But I think that the focus here was to bring something to the table as far as like question and answer type deal. If anyone had questions, and as far as the market here, anything that's good for new investors or maybe experienced investors that want to know more about Rochester market. Right, Derek?
Yeah, and we can talk about different some of the different lending options too for different purchases and things like that too, and kind of leave it open to the people out there. What questions do they have for us? I've been working with investors for 6 years. And how long have you been doing it, Steve?
Well, I've had my license for 8 years. Been working with investors since the start of that, but prior to that as well, I did property management. My family owns a lot of real estate, so I mean, I was working on properties at 13 years old. So I mean, I grew up in a real estate household. So since as far back as I can remember, I've been hearing about real estate or being around real estate, investing and whatnot.
So we'll open up to some of the people out there to kind of unmute yourself and talk. Jim, you've owned multiple properties and been doing it for a while too. Can you share a little bit with the group?
Am I good now?
Yes, you're good now, Jim.
There you are.
I own 6 properties, eight units. I've had a couple of really good tenants and a lot of terrible tenants. And anything you people can offer about screening tenants or managing tenants or whatever, I'm interested.
Okay, cool. And Jim, you manage the properties yourself, self-manage?
No, I have a property manager.
You do. Okay. And do you have that property manager renting these units for you, or do you take more responsibility on that end?
Well, I have a manager I'm not all that happy with, and I'm going to see somebody later this afternoon about changing. So hopefully I would be a better class of tenant.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My take on that, I mean, obviously, the property manager that you have is a huge component to the success in real estate if you're hiring out the management. So the relationship they have with them and how they handle their business is extremely important, obviously. So I'll tell you right now, for my properties, when I have vacant units, I hire a property manager to rent them for me. I have many clients that do the same, or they do it on their own. But I take the approach of someone who's good at placing a tenant and knows that process and does that every day. I'd rather hire the professional, and I've had pretty good luck with that. And Jim, I know you know Derek much better. Obviously, we've never met, but I could pass that info of that manager that I generally have rent my units to Derek, and he can get that to you too.
Actually, that's who he's meeting this afternoon, Steve.
Justin? Is it Justin? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Justin and Elizabeth, they're very, very trustworthy people. So they operate their business with integrity, with their clients' best interests at heart. And they're not they're not interested in getting too big for what they can handle, which is huge too, because a lot of the property managers in town, they take on a lot of units, you know, and to make good money as a property manager, you do need a lot of quantity. So I get it, but if you don't have the support with a team to be able to take it on, the service goes by the wayside, is what I've seen, and that's the case with quite a few managers in town that manage too many units for what they can handle. Do you see the same thing, Derek?
Yeah, and I see a lot of it as frustration with property owners or lack of communication from the property manager, like reaching out multiple times about things and just not getting back to them. And that can be frustrating too, especially when you have multiple properties and you're trying to look for an answer. And then again, that plays into the property manager has so many units that they're getting the same questions from everybody and they don't have time to answer, all the questions. So yeah, I kind of agree with what you're saying too. That once you get too big, it can be kind of painful for a property owner.
Yeah. I mean, it's frustrating on our end as agents, because as we're helping people buy and sell investment properties, a lot of times we're dealing with the property manager too. So that's why we have the relationships with the managers in town. And yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than trying to get a hold of them and them not answering the phone. Now, give a little bit of leeway as far as response time with them compared to other agents, where there's not really an excuse for slow response time in general, but when you have 150 units or a lot more, some of these property managers, I mean, you have people calling you all day, every day, but at least pick up the phone or get back to us. That's kind of 101 in business in general. Pick up the phone when your clients are calling you.
Yep.
So yeah, as far as managing the property, same conversation. When you're using a property manager, you want somebody that's going to have good relationships with the tenants too. So what I've found for people that end up selling their properties because they're not running well and they're not doing well, a lot of times tenants aren't paying. And then I've seen local investors pick up those properties, the tenants start paying, or I have flipper clients that, tenants pay, no problem. Then it gets taken up by a property manager, and those tenants start calling our clients saying, this is a terrible manager. They're rude to us. They're not nice to us. We need a new place. They want to move out right away, or they stop paying. So it's all a relationship based business, and to collect rent from somebody, if they're treated as a number and they're not treated respectfully, there's a better chance they're not going to want to pay you.
Yeah, I've run into that with several investors from out of state where they bought a property where they've never missed a payment, and the property manager that they utilized was not the most friendly. And within a month, they stopped paying, and they didn't pay for a year and a half. So it pays to kind of have that relationship with the property manager, and like you said, build a relationship with them and don't treat them like a number. And most likely, the profits will keep coming in. So
yeah, you got to think of the tenants, or at least this is the way I look at it. The tenants are your clients in your business, and if you treat them right, they will reciprocate most of the time. I mean, sometimes you get unlucky, you get somebody that's just a jerk, or they want to take advantage of the system. That's going to happen. But I think that's a lot less of a percentage than what shows in people that don't get their rents. don't get me wrong, being a property manager, that's a tough business. Being in a management, it's a tough business. A lot of times tenants expect things that seem unreasonable. You may be getting calls in the middle of the night. You may be getting calls saying that things are a lot worse than they really are. So I could see how, as a property manager, it's easy to get jaded. And the problem is, when you do that, you end up treating the good ones not so good. That's what I've seen. And that's when it becomes problems. So yeah, it's a tough business, but you need somebody that's just right for that business.
Can I throw in another question here?
Absolutely.
What should I reasonably expect as a return on my investment after all expenses?
So, good question. It definitely depends on what your property is, where it is. Can you give me like maybe where a couple neighborhoods where your property is?
Yeah, so we're talking like Hamlin duplexes, single families in Greece, 3 bedrooms, that type of property.
Okay. Like single families, multifamilies?
The ones in Hamlin are multifamilies, and then most of the ones in Greece are single families. They are single
Okay.
families.
Okay. And Jim, do you take mortgages on the properties, or you pay cash?
No, they're fair and clear. They're mine.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, a suburb property that's running well, if you're getting 10%, I think you're doing really well, especially after management. In the city, you might be looking more like 15%. I mean, there's a lot of different variables. And one good thing about real estate is everybody's goals are different, and strategies can work differently. I mean, if you're paying cash for them, obviously, paying down a mortgage is not a relative topic as far as a return there, and your return should be more than as far as a cap rate, but potentially less as far as a cash on cash return. So I see that most investors coming into the market here are looking for more like a 15% return. But it sounds like you have more of a higher end type properties than what the average investor from out of town is buying here, who's coming into Rochester because the prices are really low, with relatively high rents, which they're usually attracted to $60,000 duplexes in the city, which is different than what you have. Those we could show on paper, even 20% return, but more realistically with management and everything is probably between 10 and 15. So if you're doing 10 in the suburbs, you're doing really well, I would think.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree, especially with the tax base being higher in the suburbs too than the city. So that's going to cut into it too. So that 15% is kind of tough.
Yeah. I agree with that as well. Is that kind of what your expectations were? Is that what you're getting? I mean, how's that answer play out to you?
If I could get 10%, I'd be happy. But last year I did very poorly. I had some real problems. But it's at the point where, other than taxes, if I could cash out, I can get my 4-point-something% at the bank right now. And actually, I did less than that last year. So
That's the other reason, Steve, that we're considering changing management companies too. The return last year was pretty brutal for him.
Were you in the negative, Jim?
no, I think I've got, well, if you believe Zillow, I've got about $750,000 worth of properties. And I made $10,000 last year after everything.
Yeah, that's definitely not what you want to see. Now, so we're talking about last year. With last year, did you have any evictions? How many of, you said, how many units do you have? Did you say six
Eight.
or six? 8 units? Okay. And out of the 8 units, how many were not paying?
Well, I had one terrible situation where I had somebody in there for 2.5 years not paying. And I finally got her out. Had some expenses that and fix up stuff, which I got to accept. And other than that, well, that's about the way it went. So I really think that my properties are worth more in rent than what I'm getting now.
Yeah. Can you give an example of maybe one that, well, Derek, you know a lot about his properties, right? I mean, are they
Yeah.
are they
I-
rented under market value?
They're under market value.
Okay. Are long-term tenants?
Not really.
Not really, no.
So why are they rented under market? Is this what the manager, they place the tenants in there?
Yes. Actually, I was doing real well for a while, managing them myself. And I had a superb handyman that would do just about anything, to the point where I would give my tenants his number and he would just respond and bill me. Well, he retired or something, and that's why I went to management, that, and it was a kind of a hassle keeping up with the expenses and the bills and all that stuff. So I'm getting a little bit older, so I figured that I would let somebody else do it.
Yeah. So when you were doing really well, what kind of return were you getting on the properties?
I was probably getting 10% then.
Okay. And now you're talking about 10,000 on 750,000,
Yeah,
obviously
yeah.
much less than 10%. So
Well, I know Derek doesn't like to believe Zillow, but that's the numbers I'm using.
we don't believe Zillow either. We definitely don't. But you know what? Sometimes they're accurate. A blind squirrel gets a nut, as they say. So every once in a while. So you know, what you just said, Jim, tells me that the problem piece is management. Obviously, if you're doing well when you were managing, and then you hired management and you're doing not well, that's the piece. So it's good to hear that you're meeting with somebody new.
Yeah.
I was prepared to give up a couple percentage in exchange for getting rid of the hassle of keeping in the books and everything, but it's worse than I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we've talked off cuff, Jim and I, and he tells me what the rents are, I'm just kind of like, okay. And they seem low to me, you know.
Yeah.
Especially I have some people that self-manage it, and what they're getting for rent, I'm on some of these properties, I'm just blown away.
Yeah. The good news on everything, I would say, to look at a silver lining, is property values have gone up. With that, rents have gone up as well. So just not on your properties, sounds like. So, but there's potential there to turn things around for sure. That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Talk with the new manager that you end up going with, but maybe come up with some kind of strategy to raise the rents. I always recommend doing it incrementally, not necessarily just hitting somebody with your rent is 800 and it should be 1,100, so it's 1,100 now. Because remember how important it is to keep the relationship with the tenant and to keep them happy. I think that people forget about that. Everybody gets in and everybody's thinking about the numbers, which makes sense because, we're investors. We're trying to maximize our profit. That's the reason we're doing it. But people tend to forget that we're not just dealing with products. We're dealing with people. and the relationships there are very important. And we want to make sure that our tenants know that we care about them and that they're going to have a good place to live, and that they're getting something for their money. We're not just out there trying to just profit without giving something in return.
Mhm.
So,
Anybody else have any questions about anything? C of Os, loan types for properties?
I guess I'm on here. Here, wait one moment. There you go.
hey,
Um,
hey, Patrick.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
I'm on here a little bit differently. Currently looking for properties. I don't know if this is the form for that whatsoever. But personally, I've been in institutional investing for 15 years now or so. And we're trying to source currently 100 to 200 homes in Rochester. So I wasn't sure if this was the forum, but I got an invite. It looked interesting, so I joined.
Yeah,
Sure.
sure. I mean, the reason, like I said, it was very open-ended. Just want to get people together and chat a little bit about investing. So yeah, I mean, I'd say this is the right spot to talk about it. Where are you located?
I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I used to work for a company called Conrex, where we raised capital and we had 10,000 homes across the country. But now I currently work for a company called Peninsula Capital Corp. They're based out of Canada, but our headquarters is in Buffalo. We currently have 175 units in Rochester area. And like the market, like you mentioned before, the rent increases are just great.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm looking. I know, Patrick, we've spoken in the past too,
Yeah,
a little bit, and would love to take those conversations further as well. But what do you have any questions about? I mean, it sounds like you guys are already in the market here, but is everything running well for you? I mean, you said you like the market, so.
honestly, full transparency with, I believe, Jim's questions, there's been difficulties in the Rochester market as we own and operate, management wise. CFO issues have become a little more difficult. And
Mhm.
then, getting the evicted, tenants out or tenants under eviction has been painful. It seems like New York State is one of the only remaining states that still help with COVID, and that kind of, intermingles with, evictions. If they get assistance, you have to wait again. So, definitely a little choppy than most other states or markets, for sure.
Sure. Yeah, and I appreciate that insight. Gotta love New York State. But do you see the positives of at least the entry point price point?
Yeah. I would say, I was actually shell shocked with the pricing and cap rates coming from a larger institutional investment, where other markets you could possibly get 5% cap rate. Rochester, Buffalo, you're double that, right?
Mhm.
Which is insane. I didn't know those houses existed, honestly. I thought that was a thing of the past. So it's good to see.
So can I ask you, Patrick, when you're investing all across the country, essentially, your company?
Right now, I work for a smaller fund with 1,000 units. But my previous fund, Conrex, we were in mostly the Bible Belt South. We owned some properties in Cleveland, so on and so forth. So I'm familiar with a large, presence. But currently, my current company is just located Buffalo, Rochester, but open to new markets as well.
Okay,
That's
cool.
the plan.
Nice. So the pros and cons, Rochester market, you touched on quickly with, entry points are obviously a pro. Cap rates are a pro. Evictions, difficult to do. New York State bureaucracy in general sucks, right? So how does that relate as far as, are the returns still coming out better from Rochester and it's just more of a headache? Am I correct by saying that compared to other states? Or is it evening out with evictions and everything where the returns are more similar?
I would say it evens out. It's just operationally difficult, I would say.
Mhm.
There's a lot more processes and things to worry about. And then I think we're more in the multifamily and single family, but mostly multifamily, which has its own, you know, uh, level of operational hazards, right? Single family homes, oftentimes you just, someone looking prior to purchasing a house, where multifamily is more inner city, and logistics, even things like removing garbage, right? Like it becomes a hassle because of parking and room and things like that when you're doing a renovation or maintenance work or whatever. But overall, it's a good market.
Yeah, I would, yeah, Patrick, I agree with you, because I work with investors. I have some that are in Hawaii, Australia, all over the place, and they all come back to Rochester, and I think it's the entry point, I think that has a lot to do with it.
Yeah. I've looked at Pittsburgh and other markets similar to like the Rust Belt markets. And price points are much higher, but the rents are higher. And you probably can't get the same return either, right? So Rochester is a hot market. There's a lot, based on watching the city a little. They're renovating or redoing portions. I know that they've got the revitalization plan and funding there. So, that all helps cities with the growth and development, rents, and then ultimately return on an investment, possibly equity,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got the PGA tournament going on, championship going on this week too.
Nice.
Yeah, the Airbnbs in Pittsburgh right now are blowing up. That's where the money's coming in this week.
Yeah, I actually, we rented homes in Augusta, Georgia,
Mhm.
and I have friends that rent their houses for the 1 week, right?
Mhm.
And somehow collect the year's rent in that 1 week.
Mhm.
It's insane. But yeah, that's
Same,
awesome.
same thing here, man. Same thing here. I had one of my best friends lives right around the corner there, and ever since he was a kid growing up, it was like we're vacating around PGA time, and we're renting it out, and we're paying our mortgage for 6 months for that week.
Yeah. Um,
Crazy.
I do feel for the property management arm in a sense. My suggestion to Jim would be, the next property manager maybe said like a minimum require, like part of the deal, hey, I want a 10%, return on investment. And if that's not going well, you can break contract at any time, or whatever your minimum would be.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, everything is negotiable, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah,
and if you have multiple homes, you probably have a little more negotiation power
100%.
versus just a one-off.
And frankly, where the location is going to play a big part for you too, Jim, because to Patrick's point, sounds like what you have is pretty desirable compared to what most investors have here in Rochester. So someone going to a new property manager saying, I have 20 units and they're all in a war zone and it's they're an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
You don't really have much of a leg to stand on for negotiation with them. You're like hoping they can help you, but with your situation, you do need help, but you have properties in pretty desirable locations, sounds like, which are generally easier to manage. It's a little disappointing to hear that you have properties in good locations. I really put two and two together, and the property manager is not doing right by you.
Yeah.
I mean,
I bought a couple of them for him and I'm just like, I don't get it, man. I'm just like, these are great locations and desirable areas and just, it's been a challenge.
Yeah, I know even Section 8 in Buffalo and Rochester have raised their voucher limits. So with that being said, that's probably more difficult. So if you don't have Section 8 tenants and your rents haven't raised, that's the issue for sure.
yeah, good point. There's definitely a lot of opportunity in the Section 8 realm too. I just had someone that does a lot of Section 8 across the state, and he was educating me on that part of the business because I don't deal. It's been a while since I've personally dealt with that Section 8, and I don't deal with that on a daily basis. And he knew a lot about how much the vouchers were, and he mentioned the same thing, that the vouchers have gone up, and there was something about $1,400 for like a 2-bedroom or something he was mentioned, and he's looking at properties that are for sale for $60,000, and he's like, if I can get the right tenant in there, this thing is going to cash flow. I'm gonna have a 30 to 40% return. That's his model, and he's been doing really well. He's refinanced a lot. I mean, he's become a multimillionaire doing that with that model. So there's ways to do that too. There's no one size fits all, because then I have other clients that don't want to deal with Section 8 because they feel that if they're getting money for free, they're not going to take care of the property. So there's pros and cons, of course, but there's definitely opportunity there.
Yeah.
My best tenant ever was a Coast Guardsman. They get a housing allowance, and the Coast Guard station isn't that far from Greece, to the point where I'm ready to offer a discount to any other Coast Guardsman that wants to rent from me. Coast Guards person, I should say. There aren't that many of them, but what I had, I was real happy with.
Yeah, nice. Patrick, how involved are you with the management of it? Like, what is your position as far as in that company? Are you more on acquisitions, or? I mean,
I've got I wear multiple hats. My title's growth initiatives and new markets, so that can range across the board. But I can tell you there's a lot of programs out there and software on the SFR institutional level, better tracking systems, so a lot of R&D research on new products. And then of course new markets and then acquisitions as well. So yeah. My original background was more director of stabilized assets, so all turnovers and maintenance in portfolio size, investing.
Cool. And so your property manager here, is this like somebody locally here that you guys found? Or
So
is it national?
Internalized.
Internal.
Yeah. We're actually trying to locate employees, meaning maintenance technicians and just a regular property manager as well. A lot of our stuff is done remotely. So showings, there's Show Mojo, there's no need to go to a property or have a property manager there. So a lot of it is just remote work, honestly.
Yeah, very cool.
Especially
Very
after COVID, right? We kind of had to adapt to
Yeah,
the new world.
yeah, definitely some benefits that came from COVID, not to be the opposite, but I think that a lot of the remoteness and becomes a little bit normal, and you can get more done in the time. And
Yeah. Personally, I wouldn't have this job if it wasn't for COVID, because prior you'd have to go to office, and I worked from home in a different state. So it's been a fun ride on that note. But I think it changed how we operated as well. We had to figure out ways to interact with tenants without going to their house, like maintenance calls, things like that. You had to take care of, but as it comes to showing properties and things like that, they have new technology for that, all smart systems and all these cool things, right? That are very helpful. And they even have, companies that send filters to your tenants and sign up for programs like that, so you can help maintain the property, and hopefully push those, unlikely tenants that won't go to Home Depot and get a filter. Hopefully they're taking care of your house because it shows up at their door, right? So it's a lot of interesting stuff out there.
yeah, technology to help you help the scale. I mean, on the scale that your company is doing, that's it seems like a necessity, for sure, even prior to COVID, really, a lot of the technology that comes along with it. But yeah, cool. Anybody else have anything, questions, or where are you guys? Moses, how you doing, Moses?
How you doing? I'm great.
There you are. There's my guy.
Yeah. I have a little question.
Sure.
I'm trying to buy a house. You know how much I'm trying? It's almost half a year. It doesn't go.
Yeah.
Is it something? It's something about me, or it's about the market?
Well, good question. I think that we went over a number of different scenarios with properties, right? And I know at some point you're just going to have to jump in and take a leap on the first property, right? With there's trade-offs. So there's things that you have to compromise. There's no property that's perfect, right? These are conversations we've had. And just trying to figure out what you're willing to compromise, the risks that you're willing to take, or how much capital you're willing to put in for a particular property. I've sent some options, without getting in too much details, with price point versus risk, right? So a lot of times, and I'll explain it this way, it's risk versus reward when you're purchasing a property. And if you want a 20% return, and you want to get into a 3-family house for under 100K and get, it's not going to be in the most desirable of locations, and there's going to be more risk there. So you could, it all comes down to what kind of route you want to take. Maybe it makes more sense to get something in a more desirable location with less of a return, with less risk, right? So, I think that your hang up might be a little bit about just the uncertainty of which route you want to take, and just making a decision and jumping in. Am I touching on the right possibility there?
Yeah,
maybe?
I think so. Yeah, as you're saying, I think, yeah,
Yeah,
that's correct.
it's like,
I think it's
what
better
you,
for me- Well, yeah, say.
well, I was gonna say, it's like you know what you want to do. You're just not sure which road to take.
Yeah.
I think, and I see a lot of, like, well, yeah, I like how the numbers work, but I'm worried about the location. Or, well, I like the location, but I don't like how the numbers work, So I think that there just needs to be a compromise made, because no situation is going to be perfect. And which compromise you're willing to take is not something that anyone else can answer, right? That's going to have to be something that something that you feel comfortable with, for that first property. And what I find is the first property is usually the toughest one to get. Once you get in and get the thing running, you're going to have a lot more confidence with what's going on, and be able to move forward with building a portfolio. But take
Okay.
it one property at a time, which I know you have been doing, but at some point, I think, rip the Band-Aid off, take a leap of faith, and obviously you have me here to give you the facts and my opinion on properties, and decide, do I want to put all my capital into a single family, a duplex, or something a little bit bigger that's a little bit more risky, but it could play out a little bit better.
Got it.
Steve,
Okay.
do you want to touch on some of the risks that you're talking about? Because I know like one of them is like high turnover, and some of those other areas. What other risks is there out there for, the everyday investor?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it really comes down to, most of it is going to be the clientele of the tenant, right? So if you're buying a property that's on the lower end price point, and the rent's high for that location, but people don't necessarily really want to be there, you're going to have more turnover. So, I mean, turnover is really a big one. And obviously more risk of a tenant that's going to try to play the system and not pay you. More risk with someone who doesn't really take care of the property very well. You know, I mean, if I say it's a risk, it's not a guarantee that it's not going to work out very well for you, because you can purchase a property in a rough location for not a lot of money, have someone on Section 8 who's paying a lot of money, and they could be great people who have a nice family, who take care of the property, clean the house, everything's coming in, everything's good, and they stay there forever. I mean, that could happen. But your chances of that happening are much less in the lower desirable locations, in the lower price point, and in a more desirable location. That said, there's risk in every real estate purchase. So, you know, you could be dealing with the same thing in a suburb and a much more expensive house. It's just a less of a chance of that happening. So it's all risk reward, and you know, there's always risk. It's just a matter of how much risk you want to take to get a bigger reward. You know, with that, you know, again, the turnover and not paying, or not taking good care of the property.
Yeah, and you know, I have some clients too, Steve, and the first question they ask me is, how long has the tenant been there? Because they, you know, like I have a listing right now that the tenant's been there 13 years, and there's been some other ones that we've purchased for other people that have, you know, the tenants have been there 8 to 10 years, and they treat the house like their own, and they don't want to go anywhere. And it's, you know, it's been great for the people that picked up these properties. And yeah, so a lot of my investors, that's the first thing they ask is, how long has the tenant been there? You know, it means to them, you know, as far as like the steady stream of income, more likely the longer they've been there, the less likely they are to leave, and you know, a little less risk there. So
Yeah, and I mean, that's a great point, and still plays into the risk reward too, right? Because how many times do you see those properties with long-term tenants and the rents are much lower than market value? I mean, I have one lady living in one of my units that it's a 3-bedroom unit in Maplewood. She pays $500 a month. So just to show, I mean, it's extremely low, but she's been living there for 32 years or something. Well before I owned the property. Yeah, sweet old lady, you know, calls me the first of the month every month. Steven, when are you coming to get the rent? You know, I mean, I stop by there and throw ice on the or salt on the steps in the wintertime. And you know, I mean, I'm going to take care of her for as long as she's going to be there. Part of it is because I'm a little soft, and I'm not going to raise the rent. I'm a 90-year-old lady, but you know what? That's when I bought that property, I saw that and I said, well, but she'd been there at that time. It was like 27 years or something. I'm like, you know, this is fine. It's only $500, but between that and the other side of the property that's needed to be rehabbed, I rehabbed that. And again, same thing. Well, not same thing, but similar conversation is the market rent in the unit, in both units is about $900. And when I renovated the vacant unit, I placed a tenant in there for $750. At the time, I could have easily got $850, and now it's even higher. But I didn't want top of the market rent. I wanted someone who's going to stay there. It's not going to be difficult to deal with. And that's another conversation on a risk reward. It's not just property and location, but like getting a good tenant that it may pay a little under market rent is a little safer, because where else are they going to go, for one, you know, and especially if you take care of them, they're going to be there a lot longer. So I don't know if that helps risk reward type conversation, but same thing with, you know, you could buy a single family house. You know, there's all these different options and ways that it could play out. You buy a single family house, you have a better chance of family moving in there and staying there for 10, 15 years or longer than an apartment in a multifamily unit. But the risk is someone moves out of the single family house, you have no money coming in on that property. If you have a duplex, if someone moves out of one unit, you still have money coming in on the other side. So, there's no one size fits all. It's just that as an investor, you have to decide what works for you and your model and your goals and what you feel comfortable with. That's the beauty of real estate. You can do it whatever way works for you.
Yeah, and I have investors where they want nothing to do with duplexes or multifamilies. They want a single set of problems, one furnace, one hot water tank, one tenant. And they've been consistently buying single families. And then I have another aspect, people who will only buy 4+ units. So it's all personal preference and what you're willing to take on.
Yeah. So Moses, I hope that helps with your consideration on what to purchase, as far as like different options, and just knowing that you are a unique individual who has a unique set of goals, and you can reach your goals through real estate just as much as I can reach my goals through real estate, even though our goals may be different.
Okay, I got it. So I guess I'm gonna have to take the decision and just jump in.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want to do anything careless, of course, but when something looks good and, maybe not, analyze too much, just the analysis paralysis type conversation, and just say, you know what, it works for me. And let me do it,
Okay, got it.
Moses is going to
Fine.
buy a property next week.
I'm sure about it.
I love it.
Yeah.
Anything else, guys? Anything else question wise? Derek, you want to chime in on anything else?
No, just it's even Jim, you've asked when we've looked at properties too, how long tenants have been there, because that means, a little something to you too, as far as stay and things like that. Jim's got a unique portfolio of properties. When I think 5 out of the 6 are suburban properties. And he made some very smart buys. And I think he's got like a great portfolio. I would want to buy it from him.
Well, Zillow says it's worth 750,000.
Okay. You let me borrow that?
Get your checkbook ready.
2 kids in college. Remember that, Steve. Remember that.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, guys. Well, I don't know. I mean, you want to cut it out? Does anybody have any other questions, comments, anything? Was there anything? Was this helpful for anybody? Should we do more of these?
All right, so this is Bernard. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Bernard.
Yes, sir. So
How you doing?
I'm doing great. What about you?
Yeah, good. Bernard is a new investor in Rochester. He's purchased a couple of duplexes just a couple weeks ago, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So I am actually in the military. Currently in South Korea. It's 1:54 a.m. right now. So
Oh, wow.
It's a Friday already. Yeah. But I'm very passionate about real estate, right? That's why I'm even staying up. Tomorrow I'm going to work, but I still got to stay up to listen to whatever you guys have to say about Rochester, right?
Yeah.
Now, talking about Moses, I just started real estate like last year. So this is actually my 3rd property that I bought, right? I bought one in Binghamton, which I'm selling. I was very happy about it, Steve. I'm getting like 33,000 profit out of that one, and I just started, right? So me bothering you with the Fulton Avenue, yeah,
It's no bother. Yeah.
yeah. So that is what is happening. So it's good to get your feet wet instead of staying on the sides and talking about it. You will never get the experience at all. That is the worst decision you would take. So just get in there and then you figure it out. Yeah, right now I'm figuring it out on my own regarding tenants that I have inherited. that are kind of like not so good, you know, but I know that I'm in there and I know that I'm gonna make it work regardless, right? So that is what it is. Yeah. I'm very thankful for you guys organizing this. My question is, if I'm trying to flip a property, right? Which areas in Rochester should I be looking at? And at what price points do you think, my mind should be focused on?
Sure. So it really comes down to the same type of concept as with the rent and hold concept with the risk reward and the fact that there is no right or wrong answer there. I mean, you could we went over some comps, Bernard, on Fulton,
Yes,
and
yes.
there was some proof there that people have done well, and you could flip there, right? And
Correct.
that's I would consider that like a C minus location. And then of course you could buy single family houses in the suburbs and flip to an owner occupant. That model too works. I have a flip going right now off of Dewey Avenue. I actually flipped one on the same street last year and it went really well.
I was actually gonna mention, especially because you're new to the market, any new market I've gone into, usually when you look at the, county websites, they'll have a list of licensed contractors.
Okay.
That way, especially if you're new to the area and you don't have the word of mouth, at least you know that they're licensed and, on the up and up. Less risk, at least.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's
sir.
that's good advice.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I'm keeping notes now.
Yeah, and Bernard, like, I mean, I'll definitely pass along Derek's guy, and we can find you other potential contractors too. Just depending on location too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I can give you a list of contractors that would be happy to work on a property for you in the suburbs, but may not want to go into the city. And I have people ask me all the time, do you have a handyman
Yes.
for these city properties? And Derek, have you ever been able to get a handyman that sticks around for more than a month or two and then stops answering the phone? I mean, that seems to be like what I deal with every time we get someone that's like hungry to do a bunch of work and then they fall off the face of the earth.
Yeah,
for the price.
it's tough because then they'll be like, you'll contact them around March for a job that you want done in May, and then they get busy and then they disappear. So, the gentleman that I just sent you his contact info, he's very reliable and he's actually done some stuff outside of rental properties for some people that I know too. So he's one of the few out there.
You've been working with him for a while?
And I,
Yeah, like 3 years.
Wow.
can I make a suggestion to Ben?
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. I'll be grateful.
If you were talking about areas of Rochester that are good, bad, and ugly, whatever, if you just enter the zip code in a Google search and then scroll down a couple of points, you'll find a profile of that zip code, which will give you how many houses are owned, how many are rented, average age, sex, more than you really wanted to know probably, but it's a good starting point.
Wow. That's some great information, sir.
Yeah, Jim, great point. And
Yeah.
And that kind of segues into the point of when you're looking at a property desirability wise, and this is an answer that I give to clients all the time, is like, what's the neighborhood look like over here? And it's like, well, it's like mainly renters, or it's mainly owner occupants, or it's a good mix of both, especially when considering a flip. if you're thinking about maybe making it open to a potential owner occupant type purchase, it's good to know what percentage or at least a rough estimate about how many people rent and how many people own. And generally speaking, the neighborhoods that have a lot of owner occupants are going to be a little bit more desirable because they take care of their house and people want to move there and actually live there, not just it's an apartment available.
Right, right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. All right, guys. Well, yeah, I think unless anyone's got anything else, maybe we'll wrap it up. And I appreciate all you guys for all your input. And I like this. I like the discussion here, and I'd like to do another one of these. At some point too. I mean, just getting investors together and chatting a little bit about where they are and giving advice to each other. I think it's a good forum.
Yeah, I agree. I like the openness and just kind of not really having an agenda and just kind of seeing where everybody's at and sharing information. And I think it's a great tool.